Good afternoon, fellow Anguillians. This brings us to yet another press briefing. And before we embark on this press briefing, I would like to offer up a word of prayer. 1 Peter 2:9 says, "You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." O Lord, we come before you at this time of need to ask of your healing hand on those who are ailing from all and any afflictions. We ask for your mercies as we navigate through this time of pandemic. We ask that you give us wisdom, humility, and the spirit of discernment. Above all else, we pray your grace and covering, especially over our health team and the Honorable Premier. We say thank you in advance for restoring the health of those of us battling with any illness and keeping your merciful hand over the well-being of our citizens and residents. Amen. Good afternoon, and as usual, we'll allow the Honorable Premier, Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster, to open us up. Premier.
Good afternoon to you, our moderator and minister. Good afternoon to Commissioner of Police, Mr. David Lynch, and the media and all our ministers who are on. Just want to say happy Friday, and thank God for another week that has passed, and without loss of life, and certainly understanding where we are. I have a speech to make, but I want to save it till after. So if it's okay with you, moderator, minister, I'd like to go into the health update. Today, again, our CMO, permanent secretaries, they are working on some other pressing issues, and so I will stand in place. Although I'm a poor replacement for them, I will certainly give the update. Want to say that as of 3 o'clock today, we have 64 positive COVID-19 cases. Out of this is still related to the cluster. The contact tracing continues. 1,414 persons have been tested so far. There are 57 adults, 7 children. I would like to report that one 42-year-old male was admitted to the isolation ward with symptoms of respiratory distress and dehydration. Condition is guarded but stable. And as I said, the contact tracing is continuing. In terms of vaccinations, we have 7,713 persons registered. Of those, 6,885, that is 6,885 have had their first dose, and of those, 2,473 have had their second dose. I would like to ask that persons continue to register, continue to get vaccinated, because this is a way that we can protect our health, protect the community, our brothers and sisters, and get to a state of normalcy. Thank you, and that's it for now. We'll speak more later.
Thank you very much, Premier. Commissioner Lynch, if you can give us an update on the surveillance, border patrols, border control, and also anything that you've seen over the last 24 hours that you want to admonish the public to adhere to.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, just really congratulations to the public, first of all. There's been massive compliance. We have a few breaches, which I'll cover in a moment, but overall the response of the public has been quite exceptional. So I'd really like to thank everybody for their involvement, their contribution to making this island very safe. Just to give you an idea of what we've been doing, but since over the last 24 hours to 6 o'clock this morning, we've done 4 land patrols, which means we've specifically targeted areas. We've done 12 vehicle checkpoints. We've stopped 34 cars, which is a good sign. The number should be going down because people are more compliant. That's been a slight increase in the breaches. Breach of the regulations, there were 18 breaches, with 18 people have been reported for prosecution. There's been 2 sea patrols, and there's been no vessel sighted whatsoever, which is a good sign. And one of the reporters yesterday asked me a question about the boat that was sighted the day before, and that was a fishing vessel returning back to Anguilla, which had come from Anguilla. So that's the very brief update. There was the breaches, there was a mixture really in terms of breaches. There was 3 males working on a construction site. They were sent home. There were 4 males gathering under a tree, chatting, one without a mask on. They were sent home. But they were all very compliant. 2 people snorkeling off the coast with their child. Another person walking on the beach. 2 persons in the same car. They'd come from different parts of the island. That was at midnight last night. Somebody else spear fishing. A man walking his dog, and 2 other people fishing. So there's a range of breaches really, but overall the thing to focus on is the massive compliance by the public of this island. It's been fantastic result. And if you have got any information, I did mention yesterday about a confidential line, but if you could just note this number, if anybody's listening and has a pen handy, but it will appear on our Facebook page later today. And this is a www.gov.ai/911. That was www.gov.ai/911. That will take you to a confidential reporting line, and that will allow you to report a range of things that happen on this island, but also you'll see the very top one is COVID-19. So if you've got any breaches, you think anybody's breaching them, please enter it on there. It's monitored 3 or 4 times a day, and we will pick that information up. It will be treated confidentially, and it will just allow us to make people safe and give people the appropriate advice, hopefully, before they start committing any offences. But as you can see from the reporting numbers, if people commit offences, we will prosecute them for it. And that's my broad update.
I'd like to thank the Commissioner for that update. I think that is very helpful. Of concerning is those breaches, though. I mean, we have been preaching since last Thursday about what are considered to be breaches, and then it's just, unconscionable and certainly not acceptable that persons would continue to do that. Stay home. That's all we can ask you to do. And certainly I appreciate that you're prosecuting these breaches, Commissioner.
Any questions from the media? Dan William, go ahead.
Good afternoon again on a Friday afternoon. James Harrigan here from England. I read with interest the letter from Lord Ahmad, and I am very much impressed with it. I take note of the fact that he mentioned his admiration for St. Helena, which had the vaccination within 4 weeks. I want to know if he's abreast or if information is given to him about Anguilla's status as far as the vaccination is concerned, and what is his impression?
I would like the Premier to answer that question. But before he answers that question, the population of St. Helena, as Mr. Lynch can tell you, is significantly less than Anguilla. But as it relates to him knowing what is going on in the vaccination uptake, definitely he's fully aware. But Premier, can you chime in?
I think that you've answered it. He is aware through the governor's office of what is happening here in Anguilla with the vaccination program, the COVID status, and the other issues. So yes, I don't know, in terms of St. Helena's, vaccination. I don't know, how soon they got theirs done. Certainly, we've been sitting on ours since February the 5th, the vaccination doses, and certainly we would have hoped that by now we were further along.
A follow-up to that question, let me ask you this one, Premier. Is any plans by government to really push the campaign for vaccinations any further than you have done so far?
Yeah.
Well, we have announced that we wanted mandatory for frontline persons in the public and private sector to be vaccinated, and that we're working on the regulations for that at this time, and we will continue to insist on that to make sure that we get to a state of protection so that we can, pursue the opening of this country on July 1st.
Yesterday, I asked a question about tourism. And the person who really asked me to ask that question wasn't really satisfied with the answer. I would like to rephrase that question again and ask if it's possible to do bookings as of May the 7th.
We will answer that question next week, Mr. Aragon. I think that, we said the site, iVisitAnguilla.com, that is, frozen right now. And we will answer that question next week when we've reassessed the situation. And the health team wanted me to convey that on the 4th, which is next Tuesday. We should be doing a reassessment of where we are in terms of the cases, the contact tracing, etc. So just be patient with us. This is not normal times, and certainly we are not hiding any information. We will get to you as soon as we understand the situation on the ground.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I have a question from our online viewers related to the regulations. And we have the regulations allow for farming and fishing, registered fishers. But the question is related to animal husbandry and whether or not persons who are involved in animal husbandry can leave their premises to take care of their animals and to collect bush, chopped bush, wild mobosa and the like to feed their animals.
Well, I think based on the regulations, that is possible between the hours of 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. I don't know if the commissioner has any specifics regarding that, but certainly that would be my understanding.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. I think the main point to note, and I think it was made by the doctor the other day, is the fact that there's all these exceptions being asked about, but actually people just need to redesign their lives a little bit to be able to do their functions within the permitted time, because it's for a fairly short period of time and it is just to keep people safe. So it's really important that people try and redesign their lives to fit in with this. And the aim of this ultimately is just to try and keep people apart whilst we go through this difficult time.
There's also another question while we wait on the press to ask other questions. I'll take some questions from the online viewers. There's a question related to elder workers. What is the position of the Royal Anguilla Police Force? Because as you know, they're working and some will be going in, as a matter of fact, later in the evening. So what is the position as it relates to that? I know this question has been answered before, but Commissioner Lynch, can you answer the question as it relates to hospitality workers?
Could you just say that once more, because it was very distorted for me?
Yeah, the question is related to hospitality workers traversing, commuting back and forth from work beyond the hours of 6 p.m. And what the regulations stipulate as it relates to whether or not they will be in violation of the current regulations?
Yeah, the regulations were altered yesterday, so the word is now expected rather than required, or the word on the original set of regulations was shall be at home certain times. Now it's shall be expected to be, and obviously like any other mature organisation and any other mature population, people would expect us to make some exceptions. But if people are travelling home in relation to those sort of industries, then we've got to support the economy. So we will definitely look at those. But it's very hard to set up a system to try and create a database that's got every single exception with every single name on it, because we're being asked for this by different agencies, different industries. But fundamentally, we'll be flexible, and the regulations have been adapted to allow us to be flexible. So I'm very grateful to the AG, the governor, etc., the DG, for all the work they've done on those regulations.
I'll take a question from DJ Hammer of Class FM.
Yes, good afternoon to you. We know the circular by the health authority of Angola relative to the closure of the temporary closure of the pharmacy. The question is, what accounts for the closure of the pharmacy at the hospital at this critical time of illness on the island?
Premier?
Yes, certainly I saw the notice, and that is because they're doing some contact tracing, and that's all I can say at this time. Certainly we'll be updated by the Ministry of Health and Health Authority as things develop.
Okay, and I had a question for you yesterday, Dr. Webster, and the person who sent the question were not too satisfied with the answer. Relative to persons who are working in the office who are vaccinated and others who are not vaccinated, you recall that question that came yesterday to you from us here? That was a question that came in for you yesterday. Let me just repeat it for you. What if people are working with people who have not had vaccinations as yet? That's the question that came in to us from one of our listeners, who wish for you to repeat your answer one more time.
Well, the reason why I didn't answer it yesterday is because I didn't understand the question. It's what is the question itself?
The question I have from the person is, they asked me to ask you if you're working with people in the office who have not had the vaccine as yet, they're wondering, for example, perhaps, what is the way forward, I guess. So this is what came from me from online. It was incomplete, really.
I got you. Yeah. So basically, before April the 21st, we would have been encouraging persons to get vaccinated. We thank those who have been vaccinated, and we're pushing for those who are not vaccinated to get vaccinated. And we are working on regulations for those who are frontline, whether in public or private sectors, to be vaccinated. Now, given the events of the 21st onward, where we've closed, taken the pause and closed down offices and things like that, we are going to recommend now that you continue to wear masks in the offices. We still will continue with pushing for vaccinations for those who are eligible to be vaccinated. And certainly we will assess that as we go along as to, persons vaccinated versus those not vaccinated. Again, encouraging that everybody that can be vaccinated to be vaccinated. I hope that that's a little clearer than yesterday, because as I said yesterday, I had asked for clarity on the question, but we got distracted on that.
I see the Anguillian, they have their hand up. You have another question, James? Brenda?
Hello, James here.
Yes, your hand is still up. So do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. I want to know if the school children have been done through with their testing already. Are any more schools to be tested?
At this present time, based on the contact tracing, all the school classes that were to be tested have been tested, and so far there are no new cases among children from the school system. All the children so far have been related to the to adults from the cluster.
I have a question, online audience. If I'll take this question while persons get their questions together from the press corps. Commissioner Lynch, it's related. This question is to you, and it's about the individuals who may have breached the borders and brought COVID to our shores. Are we any closer to finding out who this is and what is the status of the investigation?
Yeah, I mentioned yesterday really there's sort of three approaches to this. One is obviously to just give the health team a little bit of breathing time, just give them a bit of clearance time to be able to speak with them and then see what information they can provide. The second one is we have to ask for a request from St Martin to be able to gather information from there. That request is being progressed by the AG. And the third one really is through this confidential line. So if people have additional information, we will take that information and investigate it. But at the moment, there's no immediate people being brought before the court because we haven't got absolute evidence. But that's why we're seeking it from St Martin. And if there's any deductive evidence we can pull from the health authority, they're able to release to us, because obviously people have a right to patient confidentiality, then we will take that forward and we'll investigate it. But at the moment, those three strands, it is very much trying to work and gather information and evidence from St Martin, trying to work very much with the health authority, but they definitely need a little bit of time to focus on their priority, which is healthcare, rather than helping us at the moment. And the third one is through this confidential helpline, which hopefully people will put confidential information on about either what's happening today or what's happened in the past, with opportunities for us to give us that evidence. And I'll just repeat that line again, that government contact point again. It's www.gov.ai/911. I then encourage people to give us information, because ultimately by doing so, you allow us to protect the borders even more.
Hayden, can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Brenda. You can go ahead with your question. Is that Brenda?
No,
yes,
it's Dawn.
Oh, Dawn, sorry, my apologies.
It's Dawn.
You can go ahead.
That's okay. No, and for some reason, the hand up icon is not working for me, and it may not be working for others as well, which is why there may be a delay on us asking questions. So I have a question for Commissioner. Commissioner, there are quite a few people that, especially the older people, who don't have access to the internet. Is there an actual phone number that people can call in versus going on the web to report infractions?
There is a confidential helpline number. I don't have it with me, but it's a good time just to also say we're going to try over the next few months really to bring in something called Crime Stoppers. So we'll give, there's always concern when people call in saying their information isn't treated confidentially, but this was a system that will allow that information to be treated absolutely confidentially, because we only get the information, we don't get the contact details. So we're going to try and set that up over the next few months, but I can certainly have that telephone number put on Facebook either today or tomorrow.
Thank you. And I just want to commend the situational report, the Iron Dome 2. It just very succinctly, covers all the information on a 24-hour basis of what the Royal Police are doing.
Thank you. I'll thank the staff.
For that, and could you give me a, is there a release time for it? I checked your website right before this conference and I didn't see it. So I was just wondering if there's a particular time that it's published during the day.
Yeah, we're going to release it at 6 o'clock, but what we've agreed is that we will also make sure before we release any information in relation to COVID that the Health Directorate will just agree to that as well, to make sure that we're not going to release information that causes any confusion So the information will be released at 6 o'clock. The only thing will delay it is just the approval of the health team here.
Thank you. And I have one more question for the Premier. Premier, I know health information is confidential, but I've been asked to ask this question, and it pertains to the pharmacy closing. There is a lot of talk that there are people within the hospital that are now infected. Can you confirm that or non-confirm it for us?
At this point in time, I can say that the contact tracing is continuing, and that is accounted for why the pharmacy is closed. I can't divulge any specific information at this time. Certainly the health team is still at work, and they would be the ones who would make any releases on that in that regard.
Thank you.
I have a question.
And are there other hands up? Okay.
Yeah, Felicia hand is Anguilla. Her hand is up. And the Anguilla.
Okay.
I'll
be quiet then.
James, we'll go to you after Felicia.
Good afternoon. Dr. Lorenzo, you just mentioned a 2-year-old male baby being admitted, and I know recently we had a 7-month-old baby. Are these conditions troubling to you?
It's a 42-year-old male.
Oh, a 42, okay.
Yeah, that's a 42-year-old male. Certainly, you know, the well-being of anyone is concerning to us, and to me especially as a physician. And so, you know, we're keeping a close eye on this gentleman to make sure that we can, you know, alleviate his symptoms, and we'll, you know, make sure, we want to make sure that it doesn't progress to anything worse than it is right now.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for the commissioner as it relates to the illegal re-entry. You mentioned, Commissioner, that you've sought the advice, or you've spoken to the AG and seeking to get some footage from St. Martin. Is this footage related to one specific area, perhaps the Anguilla St. Martin dock, or are you looking to get footage from other areas that these persons may have visited, perhaps casinos and entertainment houses?
Yeah, I'm going to be very vague if you don't mind here. What we are going to look just to make sure people get a fair chance if we do take this case forward. We're just going to look to gather information and evidence from St. Martin, and that evidence will be disclosed to the court at the appropriate time. But at this point in time, I'm not really going to elaborate on that, because otherwise we will set hairs running here, and I don't want that to happen, because it's really important the general public here have a clear understanding that really our main commitment is, if people have breached these, we will do as much as we can to gather the information, and we will seek to put people before the court so the court can consider it and apply whatever justice they think proportionate. But I'm not really willing to go into more details at this time.
All right, thank you so much.
We have James from the Anguilla. You have a question?
Yes, pertaining to vaccinations again. Some time ago, prior to the close down, there was petitions going around protesting mandatory, quote-unquote, mandatory vaccinations. Now, the Premier decided that he is right now throwing regulations for vaccinations. How far does those regulations go, Premier? And do you expect any pushback or resistance?
Well, we did release previously that we are requiring mandatory vaccination for those on the front line in the public sector. So that would be immigration, customs, you know, government offices that have to have contact with the public, and also in the private sector, especially in hospitality. And that will be defined in the regulations, which are being worked on by the Attorney General Chambers at this time. I do expect some pushback. There are certain persons, you know, who has some vaccine hesitancy, and I will speak to that in a bit after in closing. And certainly, some people have valid concerns and others don't, and we'll try to address those.
Felicia? Felicia, I see your hand is still up. You want to go ahead?
Oh, sorry. That's a mistake.
I don't have any questions online. Anybody else have any questions?
Good afternoon to you again. In terms of contingency, because we know that we're doing contact tracing at the hospital, I'm trying to turn this volume down on this laptop here. But in terms of contingency, let's assume that there's an issue there with COVID-19. Plans, Dr. Webster, to deal with that for us there? I mean, that's a very serious thing if it occurs. How do we deal with that?
Well, Hammer, it's hard to deal in hypothetical situations. Certainly, contact tracing would be done, of course, testing, and then decisions would be made based on what the tests reveal. Certainly, the treatment right now would be isolation, quarantine. For any contacts that are, found, and any positive cases are treated that way. Isolate, contact trace, treat, and that's it. So that's why we are stressing vaccination, because vaccination does give us a chance to protect ourselves from the disease, from serious symptoms, from the chance of transmitting the virus, and so that's why we keep pushing vaccination as the way out from this.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Question is from the Daily Herald about vaccinations for the Premier. Today it looked like it was a really good day. The numbers are good for both the first and the second shots overlap yesterday, but we still have looks like at least 3,000 doses of vaccine to be given within 15 days or 10 working days. So my question is, at what point, if it continues on the track that it's going now, we won't get to 10,000 people vaccinated. So at what point will we hear any kind of pivot in terms of what we're going to do for opening Anguilla to the tourists, to the workers, all of it? Could you hear me?
Yes, I did, and that's an excellent question. The plan is that we want to continue to encourage persons to get vaccinated. If the registration numbers go up, to 12,000 by tomorrow, we will find a way to vaccinate everyone that is registered within that time period. So that's what we want to do. The question was asked about mandatory requirement to be vaccinated, and those, as I said, and those regulations are forthcoming, and that will increase the numbers, and then we will go from there. But the intention is to open this country by July 1st, and the only way that can happen is for everybody to do their part and stay at home now so that we can get past this cluster, so we can get back to where we were, where there was no cases in Anguilla that we were not in control of, that were not isolated. We need to be able to do that. We need to then, get everybody vaccinated so we protect ourselves and we protect the country. And if we get there and they still haven't met the required amount for herd immunity, and then there certainly will be protocols put in place. and you know, persons may not be happy with the protocols that will go in place if we're not vaccinated. But yeah, so basically, we will take all that into consideration as we move forward. But the plan is right now that we want to be open on July 1st, where persons who are vaccinated for 3 weeks before they come, that they'll come to Anguilla and not have to quarantine. And that may require that they have to wear masks, that we have to continue the distancing, that we you know, have to limit some activities. These are all you know, protocols which we'll be considering as we move along.
Thank you.
I have a question from the online viewers related to the morality of imposing mandatory vaccinations and infringement on people's moral rights and beliefs and belief systems.
Well, you know, the corollary to that is, what is the moral right to expose other persons who are, you know, doing the right thing to, you know, or limiting activities of a country, holding a country hostage. Those are the things that we need to take into consideration. And so, you know, I believe that persons should have choice. But I think that when it comes to a public health emergency, even the Constitution allows that there are certain, you know, rights, you know, have to be taken into consideration given the population as a whole. And so those are the things that need to take into consideration. And, you know, certainly persons have concerns, they have objections, if they're reasonable, such as medical, those can be considered and would be considered. And in that case, you know, the persons who are eligible, who can be vaccinated, also providing flow study. If we get enough persons vaccinated, then we protect those who are vulnerable, such as you know, persons who have medical conditions where they can't be vaccinated, who have allergic reactions to the vaccine, or those who, you know, children who are not yet cleared to be vaccinated, pregnant women. And so that is, I think that is more moral obligation that we have as a people.
DJ Hammer, Class FM.
Yes, and a question that tags along that line as well for Dr. Webster. I was asked to ask you, Dr. Webster, if staff can be sent home, you know, by the bosses. This is in the private sector. There are persons who have this concern that, you know, they'll be fired when they are sent home, or sent back by, you know, persons in the private sector. So that question came from one of our listeners here online as well.
And our Minister of Labor will be addressing that, I think, coming up in the next few days. But certainly, you know, these are all obligations that we have. We have said that those who are going to be exposed to, you know, as frontline workers, that they should be vaccinated if they can be vaccinated. If they can't, then accommodations will be done, which will include that they have to be tested, you know, on a regular basis every week to 2 weeks at their own expense. But again, that will apply only to those who can't be vaccinated.
Okay, and a question for the Commissioner of Police that came in as well. Should special constables be in uniform, and do they work a 24-hour shift? That's a question that came in. And do they use their personal vehicles to patrol the island when on duty?
I can answer the first one. I didn't quite hear the second question. Can you just repeat the second?
Okay, the question.
He's asking if police officers can use your own personal vehicles to police, if I'm not mistaken. DJ Hammer?
Yes, sir, that's the question.
Yeah, in answer to the special constables, they can work 24 hours. We do have special constables who do work with us, and obviously they should be in uniform. That's the first answer to that question. Second one is, no, police officers should not really be using their own vehicles, but if they see an offence being committed, and certainly in this environment where they need to stop people because they believe someone is behaving certainly outside of the regulations of this island, then they're duty bound to act. So the answer is ultimately they shouldn't be using their own vehicle, but if they have to use their own vehicle, they will, because their priority is to make sure people are safe and to enforce the law and to make sure people comply with the regulations. And yes, special constables do and can work 24 hours a day. They have the full range of powers that any other police officer has.
Another question for you, Commissioner. Any chance of people doing a little walking for exercising between 6 and 4 p.m., walking alone and mask? That came in as well just a short while ago.
Yeah, the regulations are set. I mentioned earlier on, there's quite a few questions about people looking for small details and exemptions. The rules are clear. The background to all this is the aim is to keep people safe during a time when there's potentially high levels of infection. So people should just comply with the rules. People need to have exercise. I exercised last night after work. I was running around my garden. It's a very small garden or yard, but you can keep fit in your own house. For this short period of time, we're asking people to please comply with the regulations to keep your fellow residents of Anguilla safe, rather than trying to find exemptions to the regulations.
And one more for Dr. Webster, the Premier Webster. So I was asked to, ask you this question. The person who hospitalized, was the person fully vaccinated? Did he or she took a first dose, or were they not vaccinated at all? That's the question for Premier Webster.
I don't have that information. It is a male, but I don't know if they were vaccinated at this time.
Question from James of the Anguillian.
Yes, sir. This is a matter of interest, Premier. When do you expect those regulations for vaccination to be out?
As soon as possible. We'll check in with the Attorney General Chambers to see, but certainly, they should be forthcoming in short order.
The reason why I ask is because we only have about a month to go before the first batch is expired. So that was an interest. That was the reason why I was interested to know when those regulations will be out. Thank you.
I hope that people don't have to wait until we get regulations in place that they would go and get vaccinated. I mean, it just seems, based on some of the questions being asked, that persons are just trying to find little ways to wiggle their way out of things, or to find exceptions, or just to irritate. Maybe that's what the intent is. But certainly, the regulations are there just so that, these things are legal. I would recommend and urge persons, the benefits of vaccination far outweighs the risk of the vaccination or the adverse effects. And certainly the chance that we can get ourselves, immune and keep the country safe far outweighs any objections that persons should have.
Another question from Abner. I see your hand up. Class FM.
I'm sorry. No, I'll take it.
Okay, a quick question, Premier, is related to the 2011 census numbers, which 2011 was the last time we conducted a census. And the question from online viewers is whether those numbers that comes from the 2011 census.
Yes, the numbers roughly come from the 2011 census. Certainly, we would like to see 100% of adults in Anguilla, along with expats and other residents of Anguilla, work permits, etc., to be vaccinated. That is the 12,600 number that has been put out there by the health team. We are saying we need to get at least 70% of the population itself vaccinated, so that we can have herd immunity and protect the country. What I'm saying is if we can get 10,000 done, as soon as possible, then we are well on the way to doing that and getting the country open on July 1st. We have 7,713 registered right now. I think that we can get there in short order and we have 6,885 had their first dose. It would be, a heroic effort, and it would be patriotic for persons to do this to help Anguilla to get back on track. I mean, people are expecting us to do miracles. They're expecting us to be able to provide, unemployment and underemployment assistance. Where does that revenue come from? Tourism is our main industry, and that's the only way that can come, other than, going to the British and begging for money. I mean, we can't talk about, being, patriotic Anguillians, about caring about ourselves and our country, if we can't do what we need to do. And vaccination is the only way that we can get back to a sense and a place of normalcy.
The question is, follow-up to that, Dr. Webster, is why is it we are not vaccinating over the weekends?
If we had enough persons registered that required that, we would do it. I mean, we certainly, we have a human resource issue, but I can tell you that if we had, the persons registered and we would work on the weekend and vaccinate everybody if it was that push for it. Remember, before, April 21st, we were doing probably about 50 a week. In the first couple of weeks, in February 5th and onward, we were doing, up to 400 plus vaccinations a day. And we would like to get back to that and even higher if we could. But we need persons to register so that can be done.
Anguillian, James, you have a question?
I think this is my final question. Looking at the rates, the cases, we had 2 yesterday, I think, and another 2 today. Hypothetically, if this trend continues to May the 6th, or if you even get less up until May the 6th, can we say we will be open by May the 7th?
On Tuesday, we will evaluate that. The health team has put that out, and that Tuesday the 4th, that will be evaluated. And certainly it will depend on, what cases are, found between now and then, what the contact tracing, determines. We want to get back to where we were before April 21st. We want to get back to where we were, January of last year. But the situation determines that, and what people do will determine that also. So you stay at home, follow the regulations, isolate, quarantine if you've been asked to do that, stay at home as you're being asked to do and being implored to do, and knowing that, the regulations will be enforced to the letter of the law, and, a person will be prosecuted, and there are fines. The fines, are $2,500 per infraction and can go all the way up to $38,400, depending on what the breach is. And these are serious things. These are serious times.
Question quickly, Premier, from our online viewers is related to whether or not we will proceed towards opening if we never get to the percentage of vaccinations that we envision.
As I said earlier, the plan is that we would like to open on July 1st, regardless. Again, the circumstances will determine that, because, if we are in a state, where COVID is not controlled, then we couldn't, we'll have to take that into consideration. But that is the plan right now, that if we don't hit the 70%, we'll still open, but persons who are not vaccinated And even, the protocols will have to be, basically will be determined by the situation at the time.
And a final question from our online viewers is whether or not, if we do open on July 1st, whether or not we will continue to have social distancing and masking.
I think that, we have never said not to have social distancing, as what the commissioner says, hands, face, and space, wash your hands, cover your face, and, social distance. I think that has become the new normal. And so we certainly will have to, make decisions as we go along in terms of churches being open, how the schools run and things like that. But I think that while this pandemic is upon us, that we'll have to continue with those efforts that continue to work, and the hygiene measures, the social and physical distancing, the masking, to get us to the point where we can, be safe. And certainly vaccination will push us very, quickly to that place where we need to be.
Thank you very much, Premier. I think we don't have any more questions from our press corps. So with that said,
but it looks like there's a hand up. I don't know if that's.
Is there a hand up?
Question. Hello, Brenda from the Daily Herald.
Hello.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, just a quick vaccination question. But first of all, I would like to say that the government officials and health workers and so on have done a magnificent job in pushing vaccination. Every time they speak nearly, it's actually amazing how you have such patience to keep on with it. But you have done a magnificent job. Anyway, what I really wanted to say was, looking at the people registered and the people who've taken their first dose, there's like about 800 difference. Why is this? Are people just not coming forward? What can be done about that?
Well, Brenda, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. Some of the registrants were done by other persons. So, like say a parent would register their adult child, but the adult child didn't want to do it. So that person is on there, and when they are called, they don't show up. Some people who are registered don't show up. And so that is the reason why there's that gap. We certainly are going through them and calling persons. Walk-ins are still, accepted. The first dose done at the Anguilla Football Association Stadium, and the second doses at the James Ronald Webster Park. And so that's all, if the persons, as I said, that are registered, when we call, most come, some, are not coming. We just want to make sure that we get everybody registered and vaccinated that is eligible. And that would be all adults, 18 and over, and those who are not pregnant and don't have a medical condition that is, contraindicated to get vaccine.
I have a question from someone who's asking a question via WhatsApp from England. And they're asking a question about how do we verify persons that are coming in if it indeed a real vaccination card? How do we verify for sure that it's not fake?
At this time, most of our visitors came from the United States, and they don't have a uniform vaccination card. But they have to, when they get on the portal, have to put in that they're vaccinated and have to put in a copy of the card. And when they come to Anguilla, they have to present the vaccination card to immigration. And, it is being checked to ensure as best as possible that it is authentic.
I also have a question from our online viewers about persons leaving and returning to Anguilla before July 1st, fully vaccinated.
Well, at this point in time, persons leaving Anguilla can leave, and no one can come into Anguilla at this point in time unless those who went away for medical treatment overseas. We are looking at persons on a case-by-case basis if necessary. Certainly they'll have to be quarantined. If we do, once we get past this May 6th, and if we do open the borders again, certainly persons who are vaccinated for 3 weeks or more after the second dose, or the Johnson & Johnson after the first dose, and then they will quarantine for 7 days. At July 1st, then we're hoping that persons vaccinated who are coming into Anguilla would not have to quarantine. And that depends again on the situation on the ground at the time. And we will figure it out as we go along. Anguillians coming back to Anguilla or returning home, if they're not vaccinated, they will have to quarantine for the 14 days as previously. And those who are vaccinated would fall in the same category as visitors. If they're vaccinated and before July 1st, 7 days. If they are after July 1st, then no quarantine.
I think Brenda, is that your hand up? Brenda, do you have a question?
Well, I did, but you didn't see my hand, so I asked my question. But now I don't have my hand up now. I don't know what's going wrong with these hands.
Okay, I think we have no more questions. So, Premier, if you may, can you give us an update as it relates to when the next press briefing will be, and some closing remarks as we get out of here?
I'd like for you to ask the Commissioner if he has any closing remarks before I speak, if that's okay.
Yes, that's absolutely okay. Mr. Lynch?
Yeah, maybe two closing remarks, really. Somebody mentioned St. Helena earlier on, and it's St. Helena has a 90% vaccination rate. 90% of the population have become vaccinated. The reason they've become vaccinated is because they're really clear. 2% of the population will die if they do not get this vaccination. If they get infected, they don't have this vaccination, they'll die, and another 3% will be seriously ill for a long period of time. And that was made really plain to the people of St. Helena, and that's an absolute scientific fact. So the people of St. Helena have queued up to get these vaccines, and now 90% of the population have got it, and now they're getting ready to open for business. I think that's my first comment, really. My second comment, and I'm always sound like a broken record when I say this, but hand, space and space. Please wash your hands frequently. Please cover your face when you're out and about, and please keep space. And please, if at all possible, please get vaccinated, because you will save a lot of people becoming very upset in the future, and it will save a lot of heartache, certainly for the people in the health authority. My daughter's been working as a nurse in the red zone of a hospital in England since April. She's a very nice girl, very strong, but it's made her cry. So please make sure you get vaccinated. It's critical to the people of this island you get vaccinated. That's my closing remarks.
Yes, certainly. I thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for that. I mean, you can't say it any better. 2% will die, 3% severely ill, and the rest, symptoms that we certainly don't want to have to deal with. We'd like to get back to normalcy. I thought about, vaccine hesitancy and skepticism. In fact, I got an email regarding that earlier today, and I thought that would be certainly something we should talk about. Why is there hesitancy? And certainly, the internet is a raft with conspiracy theories, person implanting microchips, wanting to manage people, the mark of the beast, whatever happens is God's will. Persons don't want to give up control or power. They don't like to be told what to do. There is chemicals being injected into the body, the speed of production of the vaccine, and this new technology, what is the effects of it, adverse reactions such as blood clots, and other risk, fertility issues, if it's going to cause persons to be infertile, lack of trust in corporations such as the pharmaceutical companies and public health agencies and government. And these are real concerns and certainly issues that we have to address, and we've tried to address them, maybe not to the satisfaction of those who are concerned about it, but certainly what I'd like to say is that the potential of vaccines to prevent illness and save lives has never been greater. There are many different vaccines over the years that we have taken, that we had to take to go to school, to travel to other countries. Diseases like smallpox and polio, which essentially almost eradicated by the use of vaccines. COVID-19 vaccine is no different. It can protect us from getting sick, prevent severe disease and COVID-19 and even death, because it is proposed that with the vaccine that it protects you against severe disease, protects against hospitalization, it protects against transmission of the virus. These are all. Now, nothing's 100%, but certainly the numbers are 90% and above of the efficacy of these vaccines. And so persons with non-communicable chronic diseases such as diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, and the elderly, they are at higher risk for severe COVID-19 disease, and getting vaccinated can provide protection, not only for them, but them getting the vaccine, but the rest of us getting the vaccine will also protect those who cannot get the vaccine at this point in time. That's why it's like getting vaccinated can help others in the community who cannot be vaccinated, such as children, pregnant women, those who would have allergic reactions to the vaccine, and those most vulnerable. Vaccination decreases the chance of getting the disease, getting severe symptoms, and transmitting the disease to others. The more persons that are vaccinated increases the immunity or protection and helps us to move closer to a normal life. Though COVID-19 vaccine development was fast, it did not skip any steps on testing for safety and efficacy. It used processes that have been developed and tested over years. I certainly know that, in a different life, when I was, a PhD student or graduate student at Yale University, I worked in microbiology and molecular biology and did work where we were looking at some of these processes that are now used to produce vaccines at a much faster rate. And a lot of money and resources and intellectual capital was put in to make sure that if there was a pandemic such as this, where the whole world was involved, that there would be fast turnover of vaccines or any other therapies so that were necessary to save lives. The testing of the vaccines before distribution for use included a diverse group of persons with different conditions, different age groups, different racial backgrounds. And further trials are being done now on pregnant women and children so that it can be determined if these vaccines are safe for those segments of the population. The side effects of the vaccine are usually mild and they're temporary. Soreness in the arm, maybe a fever, headache, muscle aches, usually go away within 24 to 48 hours. Persons with common allergies can get COVID-19 vaccine. I know some people are concerned if they're allergic to penicillin or something like that, or if they have environmental allergies like to dust and pollen, that they can't get it. Yes, you can. You just have to ask your physician if you have any concerns. And when you go to get the vaccine, they keep you around for 15 minutes after to see if you have any bad reaction to it. Vaccines are safe for breastfeeding mothers, and they're not known to affect fertility. And that the science of that is the vaccine, when it's given, it helps the body to produce antibodies, because the spike protein, that is the part of the virus that would stick to the cells and cause it to replicate or multiply. That does not go into the nucleus of the cell where the genetic information for human beings would be. So it is not known to affect fertility. Vaccination after having COVID-19 adds extra protection and immunity. So the question was asked yesterday about if you had COVID-19, should you get vaccinated? And the answer is yes, because it adds extra protection, it prolongs the antibodies, keeps you safer. Waiting too long to get vaccinated allows a risk of the virus spreading and a risk of new variants developing before the country is immune and protected. And so, you know, some people say they'll wait to see everybody else get vaccinated and see how they do. Well, now you've seen persons who had the first dose. You've seen persons who had the second dose. How many persons have had the second dose in Anguilla? 2,473. And so far, nobody has had severe effects that has required them to be hospitalized, that has caused them any significant harm. So these you know, excuses don't fly anymore. In the U.S., they've you know, hundreds of millions that have been vaccinated. In the U.K., you know, millions vaccinated, and showing that there's decreased transmission and there's decreased risk of hospitalization. I think the number is like 65% chance of that. And so here in Anguilla, it can only bode us well if we are vaccinated, that we can move on with our lives and get to a point where we can get you know, our health improved and our country open, the economy back on track, so that we don't have to be concerned about you know, that we're not able to feed ourselves, provide medication, provide the services that are needed, where our children would still be able to go back to the school, physical school, rather than doing this online. And then vaccination, along with good hygiene, social and physical distancing, wearing of masks, will offer protection until this pandemic is over. And we know that this pandemic is not going to be over anytime soon, but we can, you know, protect ourselves from it so that we can get back to near normalcy, even while the world is grappling with it. The symptoms of COVID-19, cough, fever, chills, fatigue, sore throat, headache, loss of taste or smell, nasal congestion, runny nose, shortness of breath, muscle or body aches. You don't have to have all of these at once for you to think that you can have COVID. But certainly if you have any of these, or if you are concerned at all that you may have been exposed and you're asymptomatic, you call any of the COVID hotlines, get tested. Testing is free at the Ministry of Health. In the meantime, stay home, follow the regulations. It's the only way that we can do it as a country and as a people. And so I beg of you that we want to do this together. So stay home, protect yourself, protect Anguilla. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless Anguilla. The next one will be on Monday at 3 p.m. That is Monday, the 3rd of May at 3 p.m. We'll have another press conference, and then we'll go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we will update you as to what, if the regulations will be extended next week after the 6th, based on what is happening in the country at that time. Again, thanks everyone. Thanks the media. Thanks the Commissioner of Police. Thank you, Moderator, Minister Hughes. I think that it almost seemed like you were back on your radio show that you used to do on the spot. Thank you.
I apologize. I have to apologize for all of the whose questions were We did not get to those because I did not have access to those, and I only had access to the Government of Anguilla Facebook page. So apologies to those questions that were not answered and not asked. Thank you, Premier. And to everyone who's listening, have a wonderful and safe weekend. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless Anguilla.
Thank you.